everybody, I'm Morgan. I figured we all know how to run comps, right? Like, we don't need to spend time talking about comps, because we all know how to do that. So, pretty much what I thought I would talk about today was what I do at a listing appointment, not necessarily what I do to get ready for a listing appointment, because, again, we all know how to run comps. Essentially, the first step is obviously setting the appointment. And so when I'm talking to potential clients on the phone, I try to ask as many questions as I can, because they're probably talking, I'm probably not the only agent they're talking to, and I want to establish a relationship before I actually physically get to the property. So I just ask them to tell me a brief description of their home, what they love about their home. It's surprising that a lot of sellers don't know the square footage of their house or the year built or any, they know, oh, it's 3 bedrooms, it's 2 bathrooms, it's a ranch, and I have this much land, right? But as far as the square footage and year built, they usually don't know that, which is fine. I say, if you don't know the answers to these questions, not a big deal. I can look it up on the assessor records, just sometimes they're not 100% accurate. That's just why I like to get to know a little bit more about your property. And then I'll ask them, tell me a few things that you love about your house. Tell me a few things that you don't love about your house. And I always let them know this stays between us. I'm not going to share things you don't love about your house with anybody else. So that just kind of helps break the ice a little bit. And then as far as like scheduling the actual appointment, I just say, what day works best for you? Give me a couple different days and a couple different times. I usually try to go with their first option. If it's a weekend, no problem. It's an evening, no problem. First thing in the morning, no problem. If I have another obligation, whether it's a family obligation or it's work related, it's always work related to them. I always tell them, I'm sorry, I have another appointment at that time. How about this time? But again, I pretty much always try to take whatever time they have available. I never try to push back on anything, because it's a lot to allow a stranger into your home, and moving is a big step too. And especially right now, I'm not seeing a lot of people moving just because they want to move. They have to move, or it's an estate. So it's not usually them just wanting to move just because. So after I get the appointment set, I always do my research. If it's a morning appointment, the night before. If it's after like 10 o'clock, I always do it the morning of, just because the markets can change, overnight. Things become available, things become pending, things sell. So I want to have the most up-to-date information. I always take anywhere from 5 to 10 comparables. And then once I get there, every appointment is, sometimes I will sit down with the potential client before we start doing a tour of the home, depending on what the situation is. If I can tell that they're a little bit hesitant, or like emotionally kind of like withdrawn, or not really emotionally hyped up for the appointment, then I'll sit down with them and ask them what their motivation is, what moving to them means, and then what they're looking for in a real estate agent. And then after we've kind of established a good relationship from being on the phone, and then from actually sitting down before we start the tour, then I'll say, okay, why don't we get up and we'll go room by room. Just so you know, I am going to be taking notes as we go through the rooms. I'm listening to everything you're saying. I just want to make sure I write down every single detail so I can market your home correctly when you choose to hire me. And I'm saying when you choose to hire me throughout our entire meeting, not over and over and over again, just dropping it every so often, because whether I got this appointment, it's a referral, they're not interviewing anybody else, even if I know I'm for sure getting the appointment, I still say that, because I want them to know that it's their choice whether they work with me or not. And then other things, when we're walking around, I say, have you done any updates to this room? And as far as updates, I mean, it can be painting, it can be new trim, it can be, you redecorated it, or anything, because those are all personal touches that they've done to their home. And then after we've gone over all of the comparables, even ones that, so let's say, so I've never been to the house before, they told me they did some updates, but I really don't know, you know, as far as like the scope of updates, so may have a comparable that sold for 100,000 and might have one that sold for 200,000. And when I get there, I realize the 100,000 doesn't even apply. I'm not just gonna not go over it. What I say is, this one sold for a lot less than what your home's going to sell for. Do I have your permission to skip over this? And then they'll say yes. I've never had somebody tell me no, not to skip over a home that is obviously a lot lower than theirs. And that's something that I just started doing over the last couple years, because I started to notice if I go over comparables that are really comparable to where we're going to be, and then I go over one that's really low, they go, oh. And it kind of like kills the mood of the appointment. So I'm like, I can't do that anymore. I need to ask their permission to skip over it. And usually it goes, like I said, I've never had anybody tell me no. And I still leave it there with them. And so when we're done going over the comparables, I'll set a couple over here and a couple over here, and I'll say, I don't really feel that these are great comparables. I feel that these are the best comparables. And then that's how I get my range. I always give a high range and a low range. And I recommend that we list in the middle of that high and low range. Now, I do get sellers that will say, well, I really want this high number. I really, really want this. And I understand you want that. I want that too, right? But here's what can happen if we list here, right? If we list this high, we're gonna sit on the market. And then 2 weeks is gonna go by, and I'm gonna be asking you for a price reduction. And then if we're still not in the middle range, another 2 weeks goes by, no offers, I'm gonna ask you for another price reduction. And by the time we finally get to the middle price, you've already lost out on potentially getting into a bidding war. Right. But it's ultimately their decision, so I always tell them, you know, this is what can happen. However, I understand you want to get the most for your home, and I don't want you to feel that I'm ever leaving $1 on the table that you could have received. So I'll never turn down a listing due to the client wanting to overprice it. I always set the tone, okay, fine, we will list it here, but in 2 weeks, if we don't have an offer, we're gonna talk about a price reduction.
So one thing just recently I'm finding is there's not 5 to 10 comps. There's maybe 1 to 3.
Oh, yeah.
So I was just curious, like when you have very minimal, like to take with you and help guide you, kind of.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's a good question. So it depends on if it's in a neighborhood or if it's in like a rural area.
Mm-hmm.
So typically what I start with is that so let's pretend it's a neighborhood.
Right.
I'll start with the neighborhood. And you're right, if there's only a few comparables in that neighborhood, I'm taking off as many filters as I can. I'm taking off that square footage filter, and I'm taking off that year built filter.
Okay.
And then when I'm meeting with them, I'm saying, I wanted to come prepared with every home that has sold in your neighborhood in the last year. I understand that these homes here are bigger, and these homes here are smaller. We're going to adjust for that when we're done talking about the comparables. If there's still only 1 to 3, then I'll open it up to similar neighborhoods. Sometimes it works, but sometimes it doesn't, because there's in Okemos, right? Like you have really high-end neighborhoods, and then you have other neighborhoods that are still nice, but people who, I've been on appointments where people are like, well, this is my neighborhood, and my neighborhood is the best neighborhood. Across the street is not the best neighborhood, right? Like that's how they
like those people.
Right. So I might just keep the other neighborhood like paper clipped underneath everything else. But if all you have is, I would never go with 1.
Right.
If I have to go back a little bit over a year, then I will. But I make sure I tell them when we have an appraisal,
right,
they're not gonna look at this comp, but I'm going to adjust for the value, right? And then if it's a rural area, I'll do similar school districts if I can.
Okay.
But yeah, that's a great question.
Do you use any active listings ever?
Absolutely.
You do? Okay.
Because those are our competitors.
Mhm.
And that's exactly what I say is I say, here's our competitor. This is our only competitor right now. have you seen this home? Your home is a lot nicer than this house. We need to list why this is still on the market. Now, I don't always say we need to list now, because if that's not what they want, then I don't want them to think that I'm forcing them. So another question that I always ask is, why are you moving? Again, I mentioned it earlier, what does moving do for you? I have had clients, elderly clients that live in a ranch and they wanna sell, but they don't really know why. They wanna sell because they wanna find a retirement community. You know, they just don't wanna deal with, their lawn. Or, that's it, they just don't wanna deal with their lawn, right? They don't owe any money on their home, but their home is perfect for them. I'm probably not gonna recommend that they move to a retirement community just because of lawn service, right? I'll say, have you guys looked into getting a lawn care company over to your house? And the reason I do that is because yes, it's my job to sell houses, but I wanna feel good about it at the end of the day. I don't wanna sell, my grandma and grandpa's home if it really is the best option for them. I've gone to appointments where I can't even finish the comps and they're like, look, we're ready to list. When can you get your photographer out here? And so if that's the case, I always go with listing documents. I have had one time, I grabbed the wrong folder. I dropped my little guy off to my mom's, left my homework folder for work that I had to do for tomorrow's appointment, and went to my appointment, and I get there and I'm like, oh my gosh. But luckily what I do for every appointment is when I run comps, I email myself the public link so I can view the photos, and I download the PDF of all my comparables, and email that to myself. Comes in handy for that exact instance. Luckily I had my iPad in the car, so we just went over them on my iPad. And then also if we have an appraisal problem, right? Unfortunately, we've all had that problem where we have an appraisal problem and you gotta supply comps. All you have to do, I type, 700 West State Street, comps. Address and comps in capital letters. That's every single listing appointment you will find in my email, those comps in there with the PDF attached. It's important for your clients to understand what they're signing, right? Like it's 22 or 23 pages now with all the documents that we have. It's easy just to click, and not know what you just signed. Wait, what? I have to pay a buyer agent? Yeah, we talked about it on the net sheet. Well, I didn't sign that, right? Like there's this, what, I have to have my house on the internet? Like, I don't go over line by line, but I do bullet points, right?
Yeah.
And I always say, listen, I go over these numerous times a day. I'm naturally a fast talker, as you can tell. If you want me to slow down, slow me down. If you want me to explain something, ask, and I'm happy to explain it. If they are, like a few weeks out, they want to sign listing docs, I always say, great, I'm gonna come back a couple days before and put a lockbox on. That way they don't have the big bulky box in their way. So as much as I would love to do one-stop appointments and be done with it, it's not possible for everybody. I know that Ken Lundberg does that, and I would love to find out how she does it. I know that she's mentioned it in the past, so that's something that I should ask her about. When I leave, our A-team is amazing, so I can't take credit for anything that I do. But they created a magazine for us. I leave them with this magazine. I tell them, I'm gonna leave you this magazine. Here's a quick rundown of it. Here's, the people on our team and what they do. I'm going to leave the comparables and the net sheet and some business cards in here. When I close it up and hand it to them. And I say, no pressure whatsoever. When do you want me to call you? And then they'll tell me and I say, okay, do you want me to call you or do you want me to text you? And am I doing husband and wife or am I just doing one? I let them tell me what the next step is. And I always write it on my folder, who to call, who to text, and when. And I do it that day, the day that they told me. I treat every listing appointment as they are going to list with me even if they just wanna know their value, or if they're like 5 or 6 years out. I don't care. I'll be there tomorrow if you're 5 years out. You want me to come tomorrow and then you call me every year and I give you a value every year? I've been to your house, that's fine. I only need to come one time. Unless you do updates, then I need to come back.
So you go over the comps and you don't do a CMA?
Like the feature on Flex?
Yeah,
No, never, I've never used that feature.
okay. I just use it to send people, like,
So,
email, whatnot.
that's something that our team's starting to do is those RPR reports. I haven't ventured into that yet, I just got back from vacation, on Saturday, so that's my homework for this week is learn how to do RPR reports.
Easy.
Just as like a broad range to try to get my foot in the door for more clients, but.
Okay.
So typically that comes up when before we start the comps and I put out the assessing information. And I circle, I said, this is what the tax guy has you at for square footage. I never go over bedrooms and bathrooms because they're like rarely ever right.
Mhm.
And then I talk about the lot size. And then if you do, GIS, you can pull up the lot lines and I've really never had a client say, oh, that's not right. Unless as property I have in Jackson right now, I went there and I ran comps, I thought it was only 0.46 acres, but it's 0.78. They bought the lot behind them and they combined it, but, the township and county, Jackson County never updated their records, which if you read the legal description, it's right. So,
Okay.
but yeah, we typically, I'm gonna have this come up now, but knock on wood. When the listing goes live, essentially when we order title, right? And
Okay.
typically there's not any big problems, as long as when you're doing your research, and I learned this from Sarah, you type in the owner's name, you can do the address, but then type in the owner's name, because they could have 2 parcels and they don't even know about it. And by typing in their name, that's how you do it. And also, just start with the last name, because husband and wife could be on the home, and just wife could be on the land. There's so many different possibilities.
Is it a BSNA that you're taking?
Yeah, BSNA, yep. And I always start, I always try to start with the township or the city first. And if they don't have the free service, then I'll go to the county. If the county doesn't have enough information, then I go to Realist. If Realist doesn't have enough, then I use our best friend Zillow.
I usually call the assessor at that point.
Right.
Right, but if they don't have the free lookup, they're every other,
Right.
every
They're not
other,
on the tractor on Tuesday.
yeah, every other Tuesday and for only 25
on the
minutes
tractor.
and.
Yep.
It's so great. I remember when I first started this, I had to stop and get the assessor cards. Oh.
Yep.
Do you guys wanna hear some funny things that have happened to me at listing appointments?
Yes.
This will be fun.
Yeah.
Our team always talks about, things you can't make up in real estate, and we should start our own book. So I have been asked to wipe a dog's butt. Okay, I'll set the tone for this appointment. I get there 10 minutes early and there's police at the door. And I'm like, oh gosh. So I'm like texting my mom and my husband, this is the address I'm at. Police are already here just in case. I share my location with my husband, but he has no idea how to find it, so I would be way dead and gone by the time he even showed up anywhere. So anyways, I text them the address, and I'm like, this is where I am, cops are here. So anyways, I just parked down the street, wait for them to leave, and I text the client, called her, she didn't answer, and I texted her, I said, hey, it's Morgan, I'm a little bit early for my appointment, just making sure it's okay that I come by, that I come a little bit early. Oh, it's fine, the police just left because my roommate stole a bunch of medications from me. I'm like, okay, well, I'll be right there. She says, okay. I get there, knock on the door, and I hear, come in, I'm in the bathroom. And I'm like, oh gosh. So I come in, and she's in the bathroom with the door open. About 5 minutes later, she finally comes out, and she's like, I can't bend down to wipe my dog's butt. And, she's got long hair on her butt. can you please just wipe her butt for me? And I'm thinking, you've got to be kidding me. But I get into awkward situations and I said, do you have any gloves? And she said, yeah, so she handed me the gloves and I wiped her dog's butt. I didn't even get the listing, you guys. Funny thing, Chris Silker sold it. And it was on Hewlett, and it was a while after I had gone to the house. It was like an estate situation where one sister lived in the house and the other, she didn't have anywhere to go. She was disabled. The other sister lived out of state, and I could never get a hold of the other sister. It was whatever. You get some, you don't. When I was 6 months pregnant with Eli, my youngest, I was at an appointment in Battle Creek. By the way, if I can do the research, I will travel, right? If I feel confident in my comps, I will be there, right? Guest listing, no problem. List on numerous boards, not a problem, I'll be there. So I get to this house and no running water. Her shower, I don't know if she'd used a shower in years because it was more of like a storage shower than a shower. And so anyways, I'm doing the tour and I say, she's got a garage, but you have to go out the back door to get to the garage. So she said, yeah, you can walk out there. Careful, it's slippery, she says. And I'm like, oh, no problem. There's moss all over the deck, but then there's also rugs that are like covered in snow and dog poop. And so I'm trying to miss all of this. Well, my shoe hit the moss and I just fall right down. I'm trying to protect my stomach, right? And before I can even get up, she goes, oh, and you fell in the dog shit. I did. I fell right in the dog shit. And she was like, I wish I had something to help you clean up, but I just don't. And she's like trying to give me like paper towel, and I'm just like, it's fine. It's fine. I'm just going to go home, and I'll call you with the comparables. So I left them there, and I went home, and I called her. She still hasn't sold. The farmer behind her may buy her house. Okay, I still talk to her every so often, but yeah, talk about embarrassing, right? Like I said, if you guys think of anything or ever want to run something by me.
So what about, you go there and somebody wants to sell their house, but they don't know where they're going?
Okay, that's a great question. You have to ask more questions to figure out what they want. I mean, they have to have some idea, right? I don't know if I want to move to Connecticut or if I want to move to California with this, child, right? They have to know some point. Okay, you let's get you a certain agent over here and an agent over here. Let's research the areas to figure out, what state you want to move to or whatever. You just have to, if you don't have a clear answer to why they're doing it, just keep asking. Ask more questions. Okay, you've been here for 15 years. What does your forever place look like? Okay, you thought this was going to be your forever place. Why isn't it? Right? If you're retiring, if you wanted to keep yourself busy, what would you do to keep yourself busy?
So when you, so you go there and they know let's say they just need a ranch. So they need someplace to go, but they haven't decided where they wanna go. So, and you're going out there to tell them what their house is worth and hopefully list it. So now you've got somebody who doesn't have a solid place to go.
Mm-hmm.
So where do you take it then from there? Do you make sure they get a solid place to go before you even talk about listing it? Or?
Yep, okay, so I always say I don't wanna leave you homeless, right? So before we list, we need to find out where you're gonna go. Does that mean list upon suitable housing? Or does it mean finding you a ranch somewhere, right? Does it mean me looking through my pipeline of potential sellers that could actually have a fit for you that maybe want to sell but don't want to deal with going on the market? If somebody is selling and they don't have a clear mind on where they're going to go, imagine how that transaction's gonna go, right? They're not gonna be excited about anything.
Oh, you're gonna be super anxious.
Right, like, oh, I'm selling my house, but where am I gonna go? I have people who say, I don't know where I'm gonna go, but I can just rent. Okay, if that's fine, I don't have anywhere to go, but I'll stay with a family member, right? Like if they have if it really is a great idea for them to sell and take advantage of this market, then say, do you have a place to go? Okay, Isaac Motley, he's a property manager on our team, he has a lot of rentals, let's see if any of these rentals fit for you. I have clients right now where Mrs. Seller's like, I'm ready to sell right now, and he's like, I'm not moving out of Weberville. There's nothing in Weberville, there's nothing active in Weberville. The one active, they looked at it and it was a grow house, it didn't work for them, right? And she's like, I don't care, I'll rent wherever, but I'm selling, I'm getting out of here April 1st. And so they're on two different pages, but she wears the pants, so that's what, they're gonna move. He's not thrilled about it. So I have to try to come up with ways to help him understand that this is okay, right?
So what is your response when they say, well, if you're gonna sell my house and you're helping me buy one, will you discount your commission?
Okay, well, I only work with sellers. I specialize working with sellers, okay?
Well, yeah, but
And-
won't you have someone in your team you would refer
Yep.
them to?
Yep, but so this is what I say, I specialize working with sellers. When you wanna look at a house and you wanna look at it right this second, you could have called me 5 times while I've been here right now in this hour, and you could have missed out on that house. That's why we do real specialization. And to sell your home takes a different skill set than to help you purchase a home. And you guys may believe that's true or may not. I wholeheartedly believe that because you don't wanna see me setting up showings and working with a buyer. I'm way too impatient for that. I am that agent that's like, hey, I submitted a showing request 5 minutes ago and I still haven't got the approval. Am I good? That annoys me as a listing agent, but that would be me because I don't have patience, right? So typically, if I ever get asked to discount my commission, I always say, I'm sorry, I'm not discounting my commission. If an agent has told you they will, how does that make you feel they're gonna protect your money? They're giving up their money just like that. What are they gonna do with yours? What about, do you guys get sellers that don't wanna pay a buyer agent?
Yes.
No.
Okay, what do you say?
Well, initially, we can write it in the listing agreement as 0%, that's fine, but if we get a reasonable offer, I definitely would consider it, cause you're gonna minimize your buyers.
And that's true, right? I mean, when we first had the shift or the change in the market for the commission, I think a biggest concern with sellers not offering it would be where our buyer agent's gonna show it. Right? Our buyer agent's gonna show my house if I don't offer it. We don't advertise it, so how would they know? The only way they know is if they're gonna call.
Right. I found a lot of them aren't calling, they're just
No.
writing an offer and
Putting it in the
put
offer.
it in the offer
Oh,
and
that-
then you give it to the seller and
That
say,
third week of August, my phone was blowing up off the hook. Are you offering a buyer agent
Right.
commission? Are you,
So dumb.
do I get those calls anymore? No.
no, I haven't either, like,
No, I'll, if a client's like, I really don't wanna pay a buyer agent, I say, okay, if that's what you want to do, we'll write in there 0%. If an agent calls and asks me, I do have to tell them that we're not offering it. There is a 99.9% chance they're gonna put it in the offer, but here's the thing. If you say you're gonna offer 3%, they're not gonna ask you for 4. I bet if we don't say we're gonna offer anything, they can ask for whatever they want. Yeah, they can ask for whatever they want, even if we say we're offering at 3%. I just got an offer we're offering 3% and they asked for 3.5. Right, so you can ask for whatever, but I always tell clients, hey, if you choose not to offer it now, that's fine, just know they can ask you for more. So what if you get a really good offer and they want you to pay 5%? Now you're at 8, where you could be at 6, right? But I know other agents are out there saying, okay, I'll do it for 3 and not pay the buyer agent. I'm not gonna lose a listing over that, right? But I am gonna do everything I can to educate them. And why it's beneficial for them. Yeah, you're still gonna get showings, you're still gonna get offers.
They won't get as many.
I think it depends on the house type too, though, like the investment houses where people are paying cash are more likely, right, to pay their own buyer agent. At
Yeah.
least that's what I found, but the standard residential, I mean, I just say everything's negotiable. And the people that text about is there a buyer agent, I just think, I am still getting them. And I just tell them it's negotiable no matter what, right? I mean,
Right,
it doesn't really matter what I say, you're still gonna write it in there, so.
exactly, that's true, yeah,
So,
yeah. But yeah, I've never not had somebody say, well, I'm not gonna show it because of that. I had a seller that was stuck to his guns and said, I'm not offering it, unless we get a really good offer. And he said, no, if we got a full price offer, of course he'd pay it. If we got a little lower than full price, yeah, he told me he'd pay it, but we got an offer for 20,000 less. He said, I'm not paying it. Okay, that's fine, we told the agent from the very beginning. The agent was out of town and I let the buyers in for him, and he was so mad that he wasn't getting paid throughout the whole deal. He even wrote the offer where his buyers were paying him a commission on the deal. And through the whole deal, he kept texting me, can you please convince your seller to find it in his heart to pay me? I'm doing all this work and I'm not getting any money. No, you sent me an addendum showing that your buyer is paying, right? It's just, you know, they wanted to like kill the deal because you're not getting paid, and it's like, dude, we've been in this deal for 2 months, what do you mean, right? So, again, it's just a book, we could write a book about our experiences, really.